I'm really excited about our program today. I love decluttering, and this is just a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I'm going to introduce Vicki in a second, but she actually specializes in decluttering with those with chronic illnesses, because apparently not everybody has the same, wow, I could take 5 hours and just declutter everything. And that's where Vicki comes in, which I think is really awesome. So I hope everybody enjoys the program. In case you're wondering, Vicki Dell'Aquila achieved the Certified Professional Organizer in Chronic Disorganization, CPCD, for challenging disorganization. There's a relatively small number of professionals that have achieved this certificate, with Vicki being the first in Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania. Vicki has also earned the Master Trainer designation from the ICD, the highest educational training from the ICD. She's also a certified professional organizer, receiving her certification in the inaugural class of 2007. Vicki is also a certified virtual professional organizer, and she's the owner of Organization Rules, and has been a professional organizer since 2002. So she's sort of my idol. Thanks so much for being here, Vicki.
Well, thank you so much, Eden. I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, all right. I'm real happy to be here. As Eden said, I've been a professional organizer now. I'm in my 20th year, and I've seen a lot of different issues with clutter. But one thing I have known is people who have any sort of chronic illness, it definitely impacts clutter because of many different reasons. So let me just go to the next thing here. I'm a little frozen here. Let me see, why is that not going? Let me just pause my share for a minute and resume, and let me try again. There we go. Okay, that worked. Okay, so as Eden already said, a little bit about me. I also have a book called Don't Toss My Memories in the Trash, a step-by-step guide to helping seniors downsize, organize, and move. I used to do a ton of moves and helping people organize. And I also have a children's book called Let's Get Organized. Ophelia, Let's Get Organized, and that's her right back there. So, a little bit about me, just been in different things. So the agenda is chronic illness, talking a little bit about the different types of chronic illnesses and their impact on disorganization, strategies that you can use in your home, office, wherever, to declutter, and then strategies to get organized and then to stay organized, which is the hardest thing, is staying organized. A few resources, and then of course questions. So chronic illnesses in disorganization, from depression to diabetes to heart disease, bipolar disease, all different kinds of any kind of disease, mental health condition or physical health condition, can impact organization because it sometimes can affect your brain. So that is going to be a factor in trying to prioritize time management and organize. So chronic pain, of course, definitely can impact this: fibromyalgia, stroke, multiple sclerosis, and of course, Parkinson's disease. I've worked with a few people with Parkinson's who have had problems with clutter. It is very hard for them to manage it. So any kind of physical disease can certainly impact that. From having different things happen, like a brain fog, which is common. Certainly even things like menopause can develop a brain fog, which can happen. A problem for disorganization, memory impairment. Where did I put my keys? I can't remember where I put them. I knew exactly where they were before, but now I have no idea. Mobility issues, of course, using any sort of walker, cane, wheelchair, or just having trouble with balance can certainly affect how you can access your things. Fatigue, if you're really tired, insomnia, your brain is not going to work well. Sleep is an important factor in staying and getting organized. So any kind of condition can affect all kinds of things. So memory problems, fatigue, again, distractibility, very much so. You can get distracted. Of course, people have ADHD, get distracted, but other people can get very distracted if they're having some sort of physical or mental health condition. and with mental health conditions, of course, anxiety, unable to concentrate and make decisions, that's a really big one. A lot of indecisiveness for people. It's very difficult for people. So, the mental health can affect so much, and there's so many things. Like grief is a big one. It's a huge one for people. People get stuck. I always call it getting frozen in their life when they have lost a loved one and they need to deal with their things, whether it's a home, an apartment, or just actually some items that belong to them. A lot of times people get what I call frozen, and they're not able to move forward with their lives, and they really need help because they just cannot do it. It's just too hard. Depression, another one that really can be affect somebody's capability with organizing, because it affects your brain. You can't do a lot. You just have, it's very difficult. I've worked with many clients who have depression, and depression is a debilitating type of disease for many people. And to try to be organized with it, it's extremely difficult for them. Any kind of post-traumatic stress syndrome, certainly postpartum depression, somebody who just had a baby, that kind of thing. A phobia too could be difficult to stay organized. I'm currently working with somebody with OCD, and it's been very difficult for this person to be able to take care of things because he doesn't want to touch them. And it's been very difficult for him. So sometimes people have what they call comorbidities. So they might have Parkinson's, and they might have depression, and they might have anxieties. Sometimes people have just one thing, but a lot of times they have something else going on, which can impact any sort of organizing. So clutter and chronic illness. So, when you're not feeling well, it's very easy to let things get disorganized. I've worked with many people that have had either the physical or mental health issue or both, and it's just easier to throw things on the floor because they're trying to hit the table, but they don't, and then they're just too tired to pick it up. So that definitely could be a factor. And if it's not easy to put things away, if things are on a high shelf and you can't reach them, then it just goes on a kitchen counter instead of in a cabinet because you can't reach it. So that has a lot to do with it, why these things start to happen. And if you're in a wheelchair or using a walker or a cane, that makes it doubly hard, to try to reach something or to get through to things, it makes it really hard if you're in there. So the space has a lot to do with it when you're not feeling well, or not feeling well most of the time, to try to maintain organization. So other kinds of strategies that I like to use when people are not, when they have some sort of illness that is causing some disorganization, is I always look at safety first, always safety, because a lot of people sometimes will have some things that are causing some safety issues, like a lot of clutter around a furnace, some fire problems, or they might have a chair. I've seen this many times where there's a lazy boy in front of the front door. So one of the entrance or exits is blocked. That's a safety issue in case there is a fire. Tripping hazards, of course, those throw rugs, boy, they're just called trip rugs is what I think they're called, because so many people can trip. Or having a lot of stuff around that you've learned to maneuver around, either walking, wheelchair, cane, walker, and you've maneuvered around with it, but one slight going the other way might make it tumble down. So that's another problem. We usually refer to those as pathways because a lot of people have them, and it's not hoarding, it's just pathways to get through things because they can't reach it. So they're making a pathway of things that they can access easily, but that can be dangerous too. And of course, medications, needles, those sorts of things, I find a lot of those on the floor. Somebody has dropped it and they cannot access it. Or needles, like especially if you're diabetic and they've been on the floor. I worked with somebody a while ago. She was actually relatively young, but a type 1 diabetic with depression. And I would find a lot of needles on the floor because her sense of organization was definitely difficult for her with the 2 illnesses. She just didn't want to do anything. She didn't feel physically able to. That was one thing. And she was just like, I'm just dropping the needle. I don't live with anybody else. I'm not going to worry about it. So those things, can be very difficult. So I always like to look at safety first with anybody, because that can be definitely an issue. So strategies for decluttering, there's all kinds of different things you can do. First of all, I like to start in rooms that if you're living, you use the most or don't use. So I know there's two different things, but if you're living in an apartment and you don't have that many rooms, but it's important for you to have your kitchen decluttered and organized, then I would start there. Or your foyer to get in your house easier, or a bedroom or a bathroom. Now, if you're living in a house where you have a lot of space, then I usually start in some place that may not be as used as often, like a spare bedroom. So you can use that then as a staging area to go through things. A lot of times I'll use that and bring things from another room in there to kind of divide them up into different like categories. I like to work my way around a room, start in one corner and move my way around, because that way you don't get mixed up. Because a lot of times people will, oh, I see this, I think this goes in the kitchen, and they'll find it and they're like, I'm gonna go to the kitchen. I'm like, stop. Let's just make a pile for the kitchen. Let me bring you on back. Kind of sometimes magnets need to be on people so I can bring them back. But that, you don't want to be exhausting yourself by running things all over. I like to just make little piles, and those can be put away later, because it is exhausting. Decluttering, if you think about decluttering, you are making hundreds, if not thousands of decisions in a short amount of time. And that's exhausting for your brain and physically exhausting. So trying to eliminate some of that is helpful. For a lot of people, they're just like, I can't do a whole lot. So I'm always like, try something small. I run a clutter support class, and I always have the people in that class, we're going to pick a project, and somebody will be like, I'm going to do my whole house. I'm going to do my entire kitchen. I'm like, no, start with something simple, like a junk drawer, maybe a bookcase or a bookshelf, even maybe the top of a desk or half of the top of a desk, something small to help, go through things, and not for very long. I like to use timers a lot, because if you can work on something for just 10, 15, 20 minutes, it's not so overwhelming. If you tell yourself, okay, that's all I've got to do, that can be very helpful. And I also like to get people to remember, if they're working on a small space or any space, okay, this is what we're working on. Don't look at this. People tend to look at a whole kitchen. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. I got to go through the whole thing. No, we're working on the junk drawer. So let's just look at the junk drawer only and start there, because you can't eat the elephant all in one bite. So one little bite at a time, and that helps. And by taking things in little chunks of time, like 15 minutes, that can help people a lot. Letting go of items, especially as we talked a little bit with Eden and Kelly beforehand, I have found the two hardest things for people to let go, two hardest categories are paper and sentimental. I mean, sometimes it could be shoes too, but it could be a lot of things, but those are usually hard. And I think for paper, because first of all, it's tedious, and people think, oh, I got to keep this. I don't know. Am I going to get audited? Is this going to happen? And I always say for paper, I always first of all tell people, if you have somebody who does your taxes, ask them, how long should I keep these documents? Because I can't answer that. I'm not a certified public accountant, or I'm just not that type of person, but you can use boundaries and guidelines. The IRS.gov does have guidelines on there that you could go to help yourself think, oh, how many years of my taxes should I keep? But I always refer to paper organizing too as a garden. I like to look at it as, okay, here's all my stuff, and now I've got to plant my garden in the file drawer, hopefully, or a container that has files. Files do help. Because you can really contain it a lot better than just a pile of paper. And in categories that make sense to you, like a money category could be retirement. It could be Social Security. It could be all kinds of different things, but categories that make sense to you. So once you have, this is just a general thing. Once you've sorted down, and I always call it the big sort, by the way, I take a big pile of paper and let's just put it in things that have to do with money. We'll worry about making other categories later. Health, anything like that. And then the health can be sorted down into other piles. Because I think people get overwhelmed thinking, oh my gosh, I got to put my retirement over here. Just make a money pile right now, anything to do with money, and then go from there. So once you have that, there's so many different ways you can use, to organize the paper, whether it's files or pretty files, green files, colored files, there's a bunch of different ways, tons of ways. Once it's all filed and everything, I always think of it, like I said, a garden. You've planted your garden in that drawer or drawers. Now it needs weeded, and you need to weed it often than letting it go for years and years, because then as a garden, it becomes overrun with weeds, except these are papers. So you need to weed it. I like to weed quarterly, every 3 months. Or, if you're keeping a bill, some people like to keep their bills, and they like to keep, the new bill could replace the old bill, that kind of thing. So weeding is important. That helps maintain it. So if you can't do it quarterly, maybe every 6 months, weed it and get rid of things. And there's documents that are, of course, are more long-term storage that could go in the back of a drawer, or a drawer called long-term, like taxes, that sort of thing. And then there's things you use on a regular basis. So think about that with paper. Sentimental items are very difficult for many people. There are different ways you can think about with your sentimental items. Every single thing you own takes up space in your home, everything from my glass right here to my kitchen dishes. So everything takes up space. So you really have to think about, how much space do I have to keep everything? Sentimental items, I like the idea of categorizing or containerizing, making a container that is for that type of item. For example, I had a client who had lived in a home that was her parents', and her husband lived in it, raised their children. So she'd been in it about 85 years with memorabilia. So she had to downsize and move to a much smaller place. So what we did is we made 3 categories. First, I got totes that were, I think they're Rubbermaid clear totes, and they were labeled travel, work, and I believe it was some family things, not including photos, just stuff like that, family, any memento. So as we were downsizing these items, we had made a deal that the lid needs to go on the box, and it needs to be able to close and move with you. So that helps you make a decision. If you kind of decide, you know what, I'm only going to keep this many greeting cards, for example. And if you have a box that's like this big, that kind of helps you decide, okay, this one's worth more to me than this one. So that's one way you can help yourself with a little bit on sentimental things, because they are difficult. Non-sentimental things like a crock pot, that sort of thing, they can be much easier, just thinking again, how much do I have? So asking questions, this is for the non-sentimental things. Do I really need this thing? Do I need 7 frying pans? Maybe you do, because maybe you're a really great cook. I'm not, but maybe you are. So, that would be something that's important to you. But do I really need this thing? Can it be replaced? If you did let go of it and you really needed, let's say you got yourself down to 2 frying pans and you really needed it, you can. I know you can go to a store and buy another one. So it could be replaced. Not that you want to, but it could. I have had no clients in 20 years replace something. They've let go of it and they've not replaced it. Can I borrow it from someone else? People used to borrow all the time. And now I think it's something that's kind of coming back with minimalism. And, maybe it's an unusual, or an item that you don't use very often, like a pizzelle maker for making pizzelle cookies. Maybe you make them once a year. Maybe your neighbor does too, but maybe you can borrow it when she or he is not making them. So maybe borrowing is an idea. And again, is this item worthy of taking up precious real estate space in my home? And I know it sounds really weird, but it's true. Is it really worthy of it? Because some things are not. Some things really you don't use, you never look at, and it's just taking up space. So you have to really think in those terms. Okay, so if you have a mobility or any kind of memory issue, or you're working with somebody, you have a parent or an aunt or an uncle that has this, creating a place, first of all, when you're organizing with someone, after decluttering is creating a space for them to be able to reach their things. If they're having a mobility issue, they need to be able, things to be reachable. You know, so that's, you don't want to put something that they need in their kitchen on a high shelf. You want it on the low shelf or on a countertop. You want it to be able, if they have a mobility issue, to be able to reach it. Of course, medication, you know, I certainly don't work with any medications, but reminders, of course, can be put around for that. A large calendar for people usually is very helpful, and paper calendar, not always, but it can be helpful for a lot of people. Kind of just depends. Again, household safety, as we talked about, making sure things are safe. And of course, you might need outside resources to help you with the different needs in your home, depending upon if you have some mobility issues. You know, all different kinds of things from home health aides to making your home mobility safe with like adding a bathtub that you can walk in or something like that, or a grab bar, that kind of thing. But making it safe for you if you have a mobility issue really is important with the organizing. So as I kind of mentioned before, sleep and nutrition are extremely important when it comes to organizing. As strange as that may sound, they are. Because, you know, study after study have proven that if you do not get enough sleep, your brain does not function at its optimum level. You have troubles with things. You know, it's really important to have enough sleep. You know, if you're not sleeping enough or you have a lot of insomnia, making decisions is very difficult. Forgetting things is easy because your brain's too tired. So it's important. So some of the things I always like to tell people is try to go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time. Not always is going to happen, but try to, you know, removing distractions from where you sleep. Of course, comfortable bed, nutrition, whatever that is for you, that it is a good part of your, you know, your diet, whatever that is for you, but you have good nutrition because that also affects your brain as to how you are feeling and what you can do. Where the food goes in your kitchen, again, like with like, that's a big thing. You know, people sometimes forget like with like. You wouldn't put a can of soup, or you could put a can of soup with cookies. You can, but it makes more sense to try to have canned goods together. Cookies or crackers or any of those kinds of things together, things that are alike. And of course, if you can't reach it, you know, making it, as we talked about before, trying to put that on an area you can reach. Like this little picture has a little grab thing on it for that little organizer. And that is helpful for a lot of people that do have any sort of mobility type of issues, that they can just pull that. Maybe they're putting all their medications in there, putting things together. I've done that with a lot of people who have a lot of medications due to a chronic illness. Putting them all together in a little container is whatever, it's something like that. It could be, you know, all different kinds of containers are out there, and putting them together, and whether that goes in your kitchen or your bathroom, but so they're not all over your home, they're together. And of course, meal planning can help a lot of people who do have problems with, you know, mobility or organization, because, you know, usually then it's like, what are we going to have? I don't know. What are we going to have? I don't know. So planning, that's another planning, you know, because planning is a problem when you're having trouble with organization. Okay, so time management, that's another big one. I'm just kind of hitting a lot of the hot spots here with organizing, but we will take questions. As I said, I'm a big fan of timers. I use them a lot. You can use them on your phone. You can get a kitchen timer. This little picture is a thing called a time timer, which actually uses, instead of a little tick-tock of time going down, it has a little, like I call it, a slice of pie going down, because some people see that better than actual time. Analog clocks, I believe, work much better, and so do a lot of other people, than digital clocks. Because if you look at a digital clock, oh, it's 11 a.m. I have to leave at 11:35. I don't know, what time is it now? Because you can't see the passage of time. Where an analog clock, you're seeing, oh, it's 11 o'clock. Okay, the big hand's now on the 10, so I know it's, or on the, the 2. So I know it's 10 minutes after 11. Oh, okay, I've got 25 minutes to go. You can see the passage of time. And I think it really helps people to see the passage of time. So if you have problems with time, analog clocks are a good idea. And to have them in the rooms that you are in a lot, when like you have to go to an appointment, a bathroom even, having an analog clock is not a bad idea because you see how much time you have left while you're getting ready. So whatever that is for you, creating any kind of system that's going to help you keep an appointment. There's tons of apps on there for getting to places on time, to pill reminders, to anything like that with organizing. There's all kinds of apps. I think there's like, I don't know how many zillion. I don't know, probably thousands. I don't know, but there's a lot and there's always new ones coming up. So if you like that kind of thing, if you like apps on your phone, definitely there's a lot of great ones out there. So a little bit more on organizing strategies. I talked about this already. The containers that are out there right there, like those containers for memorabilia, for example, you could say, I'm taking these 2 white ones and they're going to be about my travel experiences. And I can't have any more than that. That you can, but you tell yourself that, and that helps you make the decision of, I got to get the lid on. So that can help you, looking at things in groups. How many black sweaters will I keep? Putting limits on them. But you're out shopping and you're like, oh, I think I'm going to buy a black sweater. Well, maybe you made a rule with yourself. I'm going to keep 10 only at a time, or I'm going to keep 8 at a time. Whatever it is, trying to remember those rules for yourself, I think can really help you, decide, putting limits on things. Or I have this bookcase and it has 4 shelves, and those are the books I'm going to purchase, and that's where they'll stay. But I'm not going to have books on the side on the floor because I'm going to just have it on the bookcase. So that's my limits. I'm putting limits on things. And if you have a problem with something, purchasing too many of certain kinds of things, this can help you telling yourself, I have a limit. I can buy 8 black sweaters only at a time. Well, not at a time, but keeping at a time. So limits are very helpful, and so are containerizing things. So strategies to help you stay organized, like I said, it is the hardest part for everybody, because it's not like losing weight where you're like, I've lost 50 pounds and now I'm going to go eat hot fudge sundaes and I'm never going to exercise. I wonder if the 50 pounds will come back. Of course it will. So it's the same thing with clutter, and staying organized. You have to work at it. Every day is best. If you can't work on it every day, every other day or every third day, it really helps. In-out rules, one you can definitely use. Definitely works well with clothing. Again, the limits, but you can take things and you can say, I just bought a new sweater. Maybe you bring one in and you let one go that you don't wear. Or maybe it's a book, things like that, in-out. Take time at the end of the day to put things away. I always call it putting your toys away. I don't care if you're 90 or 9 or 50, it's still your toys and you need to put them away. It just works better in life if you can. Now you might not be able to, but if you can, taking just 10 to 15 minutes at the end of a day to put things away can be very helpful. The timer, I think, is very important for a lot of people who have no awareness of how long something's going to take them to. It can also help you understand where you're losing time if you start writing down like, oh, I think this will take me a half hour to do. And it actually takes you an hour and a half because you put it down what time you started. So that can help you make aware of your time. Stop it at the door. Don't bring things in that you do not love, want, or will use. I always look at, especially free things, either along the curb, or one of the best ones are any sort of home show, senior fair, where people are giving out stickies, pens, popcorn, cups, anything. If you want the information, okay, maybe you take a sticky pad, but you don't need to take 12. You can take 1. You know what I mean? Start thinking about it, because I have unloaded tons of those bags through the years. Well, it was free, but it isn't really free. There's a cost to that free. You are going to have these things taking up space in your home. And if you use them, great. But a lot of people don't, because they've picked up 55 pens at a show. So think about that. And anything, even if somebody gives you something, if it's something you don't think you'll use, don't bring it in. So try to stop it at the door. Same thing with mail. If it's junk mail, try to stop that at the door. Anything like that. And also with your time, just say no to some things. If somebody says, I want you to volunteer to do this for me, what you can say is, I'll think about it and let you know, because that way you can think about it and maybe you do want to do it. But, instead of just saying yes, say, I'll think about it. Or you might know right away and say no. And of course, getting someone to help you. And that can be, a relative, can be a friend. It can be, of course, a professional organizer, but it can be anybody who could help you with this process, because it is overwhelming for a lot of people. And especially if you have any illnesses, especially mobility, or of course, mental health conditions too, having somebody to help you and motivate you to keep going is extremely helpful. So help, I think, is important for a lot of people. And it might just be for a little bit. Maybe it's for an hour. It doesn't have to be all day. A lot of people think like, oh, we're going to do this all day. And it's like, probably not, because it's too exhausting. It's too exhausting physically and emotionally. So there's lots of professionals, like I said, that may need to help you, from senior agencies to ICD, NAPO, which I'll have on the end as resources. That's the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. And NAPO is the National Association for Professional Organizers. And you can find people all over the world that are available for help if you need it. Geriatric case managers, home health aides, physicians, visiting nurses. And then I think we have some international people. So Meals on Wheels, I don't know what the equivalent would be in other countries, but anything like that. A cleaning company certainly can help a lot of people, contractors, to fix your home, to make it more easy for you to get around and to be able to then stay organized with things. So asking for help with decluttering, organizing, some people get embarrassed about that. Like, I don't really want to do that because there's something wrong with me, because I should be able to do this myself. Well, if you have a cavity, you are not probably going to be able to fill that yourself unless you are a dentist. So it's okay. It's okay. Some people do not have the skill or the physical or mental health ability to be able to do this on their own. So it's good to ask for help, whether it's a friend, neighbor, relative, professional, it doesn't matter, but asking for help is a good thing. It also takes time. People sometimes think this is something that is either takes forever or will take a day or two. I've had clients that had let's see, this is a good one, a 5-bedroom, 2-story home that hasn't been decluttered for 75 years. I think it'll take me about 2 days. I think it'll take you longer because it took 60, 70 years to fill this house. It will take longer to go through it. Plus, you run into something called emotions. People forget, when you run into things like emotions, it takes longer to process things. So it does take time. Work on your home a little bit at a time. Start again with that junk drawer. Start again with a kitchen cabinet. Start again with a dresser drawer, a bookcase, or a bookshelf. Start small, and that can really help you. And remember that perfection is not the goal. There is no such thing as perfection, because when you see all the magazines, the TV shows, they're great and they might be able to help you, but they have a staff behind them. So they, it's not always like, wow, look at this, and Better Homes and Gardens or whatever, and everything is organized perfectly. Well, it's a magazine shoot. It's not real life. Everybody has issues. I have issues with my own clutter. Everybody does. So it does take time and it takes energy to be able to do it. So I always like to say to people, remember, good enough. That's okay. It can be good enough. As long as you can function in your space, be safe, and be able to access, what you need in your life and enjoy what you have. That's what's important. So that's my contact information, which will be shared. And questions, I think there might be a few, I'm not sure. So I will take this back with Eden and see what she says.
This was so wonderful. One thing I did want to kind of touch on is part of the reason we did this is not just because it happens to be one of my favorite topics. It's because in addition to the safety issues, clutter causes stress.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you kind of talk a little bit about, because then obviously, as we know, our stress affects our Parkinson's, but it's like you said, the millions decisions and like when things get emotional. You know, when we were talking earlier, like, what do you do with someone's high school diploma, for example? And, you know, can you talk a little bit about that, but like the stress that gets associated with
Sure.
it?
Yeah, clutter is very stressful because you go into a room, and if you have clutter there, you see the piles and you're like, oh, I got to deal with that. I got to deal with that. And then you just walk away or shut the door. That's a big one. A lot of people like to just shut the door and pretend it's not there because it's easier to deal that way. But it is extremely stressful because you think about it a lot. It's like a big weight on your shoulder, or our shoulders, or trying to find things. You know, you're like, I know I have painter's tape in my house. I know I do. And you spend a half hour looking for it. So you've wasted time, you're getting very stressed. And then finally you go to the store and you buy it. And then 2 days later, you found the painter tape. And you now have 2 rolls of painter tape or 4 rolls of painter tape. So it's extremely stressful. There's definitely a cost to it, not just with stress and time, but money, buying things again. You know, you're doing duplicates of things. And so it's extremely stressful. The emotional part that you mentioned, that's really hard. It's really hard for a lot of people, like the high school diploma. We were just talking about this before, you know, a long time ago, people really I have my granddaddy's high school diploma, and it's huge. It's beautiful, but it's huge. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I could scan it in and let the diploma go. I could do that. I might do that. So I always have this digital copy of it instead of the great big thing. Maybe I want to hang it on my wall. I don't think I do, though. I think I'd rather scan it. You know, there's people that are just like, I can't decide, so I'm going to put it away in a drawer. And that just comes, again, a decision later for you to make, or someone else to make for you if you've never dealt with it. So all these types of issues with emotional things is important if you can deal with it, because, you know, at some point in your life, somebody will be dealing with this. And it's better if you can deal with it and make your own decisions than having someone else deal with it, because that is really hard when somebody else is saying, oh, just throw that away. Who cares about that? You know, and then you're like, oh, gee whiz, they threw away my high school diploma. And that's hard. That's hard to hear.
Asked, this was kind of answered in the chat, but I wasn't sure if you maybe had something else to say, is what is the proper way to get rid of bills, bank statements, et cetera, safely without worrying about confidentiality or privacy for identity fraud? And somebody had said shredder. And then I also chimed in that the Humane Society will actually take your shredded and then they'll use it for the cats and the bunnies. So it's kind of really double whammy there. Is there something else that you would suggest?
Really shredding, or if you live in an area where you can burn, and to burn it. Yeah, but you have to, in this world, you have to dispose of it properly through shredding or burning. You know, and there's a lot of times people have a lot of papers to shred and they think, well, I only have 10 banker boxes. I can just work a little bit at a night. Pay to get it shredded, because you will burn through a shredder if you have a lot of paper, especially if you inherit paper from another person, maybe who has passed away or something, and you have a lot of documents. It really is worth the money to get it shredded from a shredding company. I also think Staples and some other places will shred for so much a pound, but it's worth it. I think it is, because it will take you way too long and you will burn through a shredder. You'll be buying more shredders if you have a ton of paper to go through. If you just have everyday shredding, then shred it, you know, a little bit at a time.
Getting multiple questions about what happens when I want to organize and my spouse doesn't. How do you get someone on board with, hey, let's do this? And they're like, no, I don't want to do this. How do you combat that?
That's a hard one. I've met a lot of people. I've had a lot of clients like that. So what I usually do is I will say, who is going to be the client? And if the person who wants the person to be organized and wants them, and then the other person does not want to, I don't want to do this, I never want to do this. Well, that's not going to work. If it can't work with somebody who hasn't decided they want some help, you have to want to be able to do this. And if you don't, it's not going to work. But if it's 2 people, one absolutely is very organized and wants their spouse to be organized, and they're kind of like, yeah, I'd like to be, I'll just say, why don't I work with your spouse if they're willing to it, but I'm working with them. I'm not working with you, because it makes a big difference, because you don't want the person who's like, yeah, here we are. I'm going to throw this away and I'm going to take care of this for you. And I'm going to do this. That's just going to make somebody very upset, very upset. So I always work with the client, who that is. And if it's an older person where adult child needs to be involved, that will be decided at the beginning when I meet with the client. Is it okay to let your adult child know what's going on? Because they're the client, not me. They are, the person is. So that's what I would do in those, that's what I do in those situations.
This is a good question. Someone stated that the memory retrieval is what's the problem for him. So he's afraid to put things in a file because then he forgets where he put them. And that when he was organizing it, it made sense. But then as the time passed, he can't really remember why he organized it the way he did.
Yeah, that's a problem for a lot of people. Definitely, out of sight, out of mind, and whatever. So that's a lot. First of all, eliminate as much paper as you can. If you are able to, first of all, go digital on anything. Of course, that can also create your own digital disorganization. You've got to make sure those are in files too, because there's a lot of people have digital disorganization. But try to get less paper, because less paper means less to deal with. That's one thing. Then when you file things, think about, it could be by color. That might help you. A lot of people do very well if there's like red means health, for example. Green means money. They associate the color with the type of topic. So that can help a lot of people. Sometimes having a clear tote also, like a tote that either, you either pick up or whatever, that organized that you can at least see somewhat into it, can help you remember those things go in there. But there are different ways that you can try to remember, because it is hard. It's very hard to remember if it just goes in a filing cabinet and it's gone. You don't have to look at it ever again. So yeah, but definitely I like to use color. Color helps people a lot.
Someone else asked about any ideas for dealing with clutter while also dealing with the chronic fatigue. I find that the cleaning takes so much out of me that I need to rest for days, after which, of course, things get messy again. Like, for example, the needles on the floor that don't get put in their right places. What are some tips you kind of shared about 15 minutes instead of the whole room?
Yeah, little spurts of like 10 or 15 minutes rest, maybe again that day, or maybe you could even do 3 10-minute little spurts in a day. And I would suggest too, if it's really an issue, trying to get someone to help you with some of these tasks, like the needles on the floor example, because you get too tired out, maybe somebody could help you with that task, maybe. But yeah, I would just do little spurts. And that, like I said, it could be 10, it could be 15. I wouldn't do more than a half hour at a time, because it sounds like that would just drain you.
Talked a lot about putting things away in boxes. Someone asked, although I think the putting them away in boxes was more about having room for things, because someone asked, is it okay to display things on shelves rather than pack them in boxes? But I do feel like when you were talking about packing in boxes, it was more with the idea of, I don't need everything. What could fit in a box, for example?
Right. Yeah, limitations, exactly. Limits on things. And that's what I was talking about, the box. Oh, of course, put things on a shelf. Absolutely. And boxes too, for some people, I have found clear boxes for a lot of people, it does work better, because they can see better. Because you can't, if it's a green box or blue box, I think it come in blue, a lot of totes, you're just like, it's a mess of blue totes. They need to be labeled, first of all. label, but definitely put things on a shelf. Absolutely. Put them on a shelf. But yeah, I was referring more to like memorabilia. This is what this could be, but you could certainly do it with boxes with seasonal things. And you can certainly do that by color, whatever the season is. So if it's like the Christmas time, maybe you use red and green. Maybe if it's Halloween, it's orange and black. Maybe, springtime, it's springtime colors, that kind of thing. That can help too.
Someone asked, I did put your information, Kelly put your information in the chat. I put it in the chat as well again. So that is to contact. Vicki actually does do everything virtually. So if you were wanting to work with her, you have her information. But if somebody did want someone who could come to their house, is there a website for professional organizers? What's that website?
It'll be on the back of the presentation, but it's NAPO, which is the National Association of Professional Organizers. It's napo.net. And you can find people all over the world that, do different types of organizing. Some people just work with seniors, some people just work with children, some people just work in offices. So, there's all kinds of different organizers out there.
Overall, though, would you expect, though, that also people do just for downsizing, for example? Like, I imagine is that what you do a lot of, or is it just in general people want to declutter their life, make things a little less stressful?
There's a lot of downsizing, definitely. I have done a ton of moves, downsizing and moves with people. And I think I've always said, if you can downsize your items every decade or every major transition, for example, you've had children and now they're not babies anymore, and now they're going to preschool, downsize that baby stuff. Now they're in 5th grade, downsize some of those other things, downsize through the decades as you can. Most people don't. Most people end up with, decades of things, and adult children I forgot my prom dress. I left it here, that sort of thing. But yeah, downsize through the decades, definitely it's important, I think, too. But whether it's downsizing or whether it's just eliminating clutter in your life, either one is work. But, I think it's important to do.
Now, one of the things you kind of talked about was, if it was inexpensive, you can always replace it. What about when you are decluttering and you maybe start your piles in terms of keep, donate, and then some of us did. We were like, well, maybe I could sell this. Mm-hmm. At what point do you say you're putting too much effort into it, just donate it?
Yeah, that can be, okay, first of all, if this is something that you have done in the past, great. But if it's something you haven't done in the past, it can be a lot of time and energy. I've had clients say, oh, I should have a garage sale. And I said, well, if you really want to, but I have nothing to do with that, because they are a lot of time to do, and it yields little money usually, not always, but usually. There's certainly things like Facebook Marketplace and all kinds of things you can do. If you have that skill set to be able to do that, great, and you want to take the time. But you have to remember, everything takes your time and energy. And if you don't know how to do that, that's a learning curve. You could learn it, obviously, or you could get someone to help you, but it might not be worth it. You have to think about it. Same with charitable donations. Sometimes people like to make 10 or 15 different piles for charitable donations. That's exhausting, because that's 15 different places to take these things to. Or if you're lucky, they can pick up. A lot of charities do not pick up. Some do, but a lot of them do not. So, trying to think about 1, 2, 3 charities instead of 15. Try to make less work for yourself. And that's, if you get to the point where I'm going to sell this and I'm going to sell that, and I know I can do it, you might be just making more work for yourself. It might just be worth to give that thing away.
You talked about the NAPO. Do you know of organizations, like a good way to get rid of things that have value, that are valuable, but so it's like you don't want to just donate them? Is there somebody that you would know of that specializes? Would that be like an antique dealer that you would refer people to? Because I'm sure you've had this happen where someone's like, well, this Yadro, or we talked about earlier, the Precious Moments figurine, and, some of the collections that you're like, I don't personally care about this, but this was like grandma's china, and I know that this specific crystal or something is actually worth something. So I don't necessarily want to keep it, but I also can't just toss it when I know it's worth something.
And I worked with so many people that are assured or have told themselves, this is absolutely worth something. And I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe it is, I have no idea. But then I will refer them to an antique dealer who also might want to do a appraisal, which costs money to appraise it. And they might be shocked to find out it's not. I had a client who had, oh my gosh, it wasn't Beanie Babies, but it was something like that. And she was telling me they absolutely are worth something. And I said, well, I don't think so, but maybe. So we went on just on eBay to see not what they were selling for, but the completed sales. So you must have somebody who wants to buy it. And I think many things, not all, of course, but many things are like a car. You drive it off the lot and it's decreased in value. Now, if you happen to have a Picasso hanging in your attic or in your living room, I'm sure it's worth something, but a lot of everyday items, the value is probably not as high as you think. There are different associations, local stuff, of course, wherever you are, just looking up things like that, that could help you. But there's some things that are more on the web, kind of thing. Max Sold is a big one. I think that comes out of Canada, but they sell different places where they'll sell an entire estate. Of course, but any kind of organization that does it wants to make sure they're going to make enough money because it's not worth their time. There's certainly estate sales. There's lots of different things, and a lot of them are great and could really be valuable to you. But there are some that, just may not be worth it for you. And you always have to have someone to buy the thing you want to sell. And they're not always there. I think China is a good example. It's a whole different type of generation. They're more IKEA, they're more mobile. They're like, why do I want China? And I don't want any silver to polish. You want to give it to me that I can get the silver sold to melt down. But they don't usually want China. There are some, and there are probably some China that's worth something, maybe, but a lot of China does not have the value because it's a different generation. They just don't want it. They don't entertain the way people did 50 years ago.
Have some good suggestions in the chat. I do encourage everyone to save their chat. There are 3 dots on the bottom of your chat where you can click on them and save your chat. This is also a relief for me because I can now text my son that his Pokemon cards that he's convinced I have given away for would have earned him millions if he had sold them. And so now I'm going to have to call him and let him know what I learned today.
I don't know. I'm not an antique dealer, but I do know after being around for a while, people want their things to be valuable. And some things are, or worth something that it's worth going to an estate person to sell the things and get a few $1,000s maybe. But it might not be worth the, I don't know, the phone might not be worth $10,000 as you thought it might be because somebody told you that. It might be, but probably not. So.
Also, just again to repeat the saved chat, if you look at the bottom of your chat under the to everyone, you'll see something to write, you'll see a little smiley face. And if you click on the 3 dots for more, pop-up will appear and you can save your chat at the top. What about somebody once said about that they felt like they couldn't get rid of a collection because they were kind of identified by having that collection. And what she'd actually told me once was that it's not even like I liked all the things I got. It was sort of like everybody just kept giving it to me. I was sort of the girl who just loved giraffes. And so now I have all these giraffes and I feel like I would almost be losing a part of myself if I parted with them.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of people with collections feel that way, or things that their mother had maybe, or their grandmother, or somebody in their life, and they feel like if I throw that away, I'm throwing them away. Well, you have to remember, you do not have to be the curator of a museum of collections or your mother's stuff. You don't have to be. You can quit that job because that's kind of what it becomes. You're a curator of a museum of stuff. And you don't really have to do that anymore. You can with a collection, you can, tell yourself, okay, it's things, first of all. You did get all these things. It is part of your identity, but you're in a different place in your life, maybe where your identity is the same, but you're changing. So maybe you're not accepting any more giraffes from people as gifts, but maybe you're going through your giraffes, and I'm going to say you have 100 of them. And you can start looking at, who do I like the best of these giraffes? Who do I absolutely love? And start putting the piles in there. Who do I love? Who do I kind of like? Another pile. And who do I really don't care about? And that starts getting it down. So you can keep a portion of something, a portion of china. China's a good one too. People think if I break it up, it won't be worth anything. Well, it may not be anyway. You can keep 2 place settings or 4 place settings. You don't have to keep 18. You can keep just a portion of things. Just a portion.
Less is more, basically, sometimes. And then one thing you kind of talked about was also keeping things together. So like you talked about, you don't put the soup and the cookies together. Can you just talk a little bit about that? That's also kind of a good way to sort things, because sometimes you might find that you had 3 of something here and 3 of something there and 3 of something there. And like you said, you don't need 9 of the same thing. You know, kind of working with that a little bit.
That's exactly what happens. Definitely when you're decluttering, try to put those things together, because if it's notepads, for example, that's a big one. You have 5, and then you go into the other room and, hey, here's another 2. And then, oh, I got these on sale. Here's 10 more. And here's, so if you get them together, if you can, and if you have the space to do that, that's why that spare bedroom is always nice. If you have that kind of space that you can lay things out, then you might find out, I have 35 notebooks. Maybe you want to keep 35 notebooks. Maybe you do, but maybe you just want to limit yourself to 10 so you can let go of the rest. So try to do that. Yeah, definitely try to, as you are decluttering, put like things together, and you can see how many you have from other rooms, starting to gather it.
We are reaching the end. As always, at PMD Alliance, we have a tradition, our wave of gratitude. This was so wonderful. You've really helped us declutter, hopefully. Everybody, you can reach out, and Vicki is available virtually. So if you've got questions or whatnot, this will be available tomorrow. And thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. I hope you learned it. One thing I did want to say, I saw somebody said something about the landfill. I don't like to put things in a landfill either, but sometimes some things do have to go. But there are a lot of ways to recycle. I just wanted to add that. So, okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.